Hi, I'm Dr. O, and today we're here. We're in Prosper, Texas, and it's a little chilly. Dr. Amy has her coat on, and Jester has his coat on. And so we're going to take this opportunity to talk about blanketing. Because Jester's a horse that gets routine chiropractic care, and while he has his blankets on, he will have different subluxations, different problem areas than when he's not blanketed in the summer. And remember, I talked to a lot of people that are like, oh man, it got a little bit cold. If these horses are outside all the time, even if they're in the barn all the time and then turned out and in the barn and out, and they have a regular routine, 15-20 degrees difference isn't going to bother them in a day. When we have these real drastic changes, or if these horses that are out in pasture that are cold and wet and don't have a place to get out of the rain and cold and it's below freezing, those horses are the ones that need to be blanketed. If we body clip these horses, then yes, they need to be blanketed. But we have to remember that when we turn these horses out in pasture with their blanket on, we decrease their sun exposure. And Dr. Amy, why don't you tell us what all that can do?
Well, even in humans, there have been some recent quote-unquote studies that have shown us that children are not getting enough vitamin D in their diets. But you know what? We create vitamin D all by ourselves by standing out in the sunlight. And so do horses. The problem is that children are getting less and less exposure. They don't play outside as much. Horses are having the same problem. The DVD players and the video games these horses are playing is ridiculous, Dr. O. No, not really. But we, as humans, tend to anthropomorphize them and say, oh, they need to be in a stall, they need to be in a barn, they need to be covered up. And when we do that, we decrease their vitamin D ability to be made, which decreases their ability to absorb calcium, phosphorus, and magnesium. When these minerals become depleted in the system, we leave them open to diseases. We used to see things like grass tetany in cattle because the calcium was too high and it upset their magnesium balance. We don't see that in cattle as much as we used to because we understand the disease. But we are starting to see it in horses in the winter because horses are becoming magnesium depleted because they aren't getting enough vitamin D because of less exposure to the sun. So how do we correct that? Well,
more exposure to the sun, or?
More exposure to the sun is your best way to correct that because that avoids overdosing, which avoids imbalancing the other vitamin ratios. Remember that we take in minerals and vitamins in ratio to one another, not in single elementary sources. In other words, if we only give these horses calcium, we've upset their phosphorus, their magnesium, their potassium levels, everything goes off, which upsets hormone output, and now we've got a horse who can't function.
Right, and not only can he not function internally, but one thing that I see as a chiropractor and that people are upset about because I'm not riding my horse as much in the winter, how come he has more subluxations than normal? I don't understand it. Well, one is he's not getting as much motion as normal.
Because he's not turned out as much.
He's not turned out. And even when he is turned out, let's just take a look at what this blanket does. And this blanket, it fits fairly good for Jester. It's not overly tight or anything. But it's really heavy right here, which is just like a saddle fit. So now we have saddle right here on his withers the whole time. We have weight on his withers the whole time. That gets worse every time he moves his leg forward because when he moves his leg forward, we can see it pull. Okay? So this leg comes forward, it pulls all the way back there. Same way with this one. You can see it pull, and he's not liking me to pull it up. If we ask him to take his leg back, bring his leg back, he'll bring it forward. But right there's the extent. That's all the further back he can bring it. He can't. So when he goes out in turnout with his blanket, he can't exhibit full range of motion anymore.
So he's going to actually exhibit things like decreased waste product disposal because those cells aren't going to go through a full range of motion. So the disposal of waste products is going to be at a different rate, a slower rate than they would be during the summer when he can buck and play and run around and get more oxygen into the tissue.
Right. So it becomes more important on these winter horses when we have them under blankets, the horse like Jester, we need to do some things like equine.
Make sure he's got good nutrition.
Good nutrition.
So that our vitamins and minerals are in balance and in the proper ratio.
Right. We may add a product like Standard Processes, equine metabolic support, because that's going to help his cells function. And remember that the whole is only as strong as its weakest part. It works that way in a football team. It works that way in basketball. It works that way in the office team. I mean, our team is only as strong as me because I'm the weakest link. But in everything, and so in our horse can only be as strong as his weakest cell. And so we have to make the cell healthy. We have to remember that there is truly only one disease, cellular dysfunction. And if we can correct cellular dysfunction,
every cell's dysfunction.
Every cell in the horse's body.
Not just the little patch of hair here.
Then by using our products, by using our proper nutrition, by getting these horses exercise, so maybe it's cold out.
Them or acupuncturing them to reestablish normal hormone output.
Right. So even though it's cold out here, and even though you have your coat on, when we need to make sure that every day Jester gets some turnout time naked. He needs to be able to run around free so that he can harmonize his health.